Hi, everybody. So this is going to be a short kind of lecture video about the 3 different pieces of the identity exploration project. So you don't need to watch this. All the information you need to do the assignments will be given on eCampus, but this is just a kind of opportunity to talk it through and maybe give you some more examples if you're struggling with it or kind of unsure what I'm asking for. So this is a really loosely defined assignment, and that's meant to give you a lot of freedom to do what you want to do, but I know that can also be really confusing, especially when you're starting off. So hopefully this video will help you kind of see what I'm expecting you to do or what you could do to take advantage of the freedom. In this paper, there's these different pieces you can see on the screen, so you can pause it here or read it on eCampus. I'm not going to read through each piece for you. But essentially, I'm asking you to select some kind of media. So a movie, a TV show, a song, anything that interests you. So, I really do recommend that you do something you actually like. If you do a movie you've seen before. If it's a TV show, something you watch regularly, just so it can be something where you feel like you really do know a character, because you're going to be selecting a character from that media and one of the identities that they hold. And so this is essentially going to be you telling me who is this person, why are they the way that they are, and so forth. So you're going to go into a lot more detail on that in your final project. In this identity selection paper, it's only 2 pages, so it's going to be like a paragraph introducing me to the character. So assume that I have no idea what movie or TV show, I've never heard of it before. You're introducing something new to me. Give me a little bit of a summary, tell me about the identity, and then talk to me a little bit about why you've chosen this. I do want to see why this identity or this TV show or this film or this song speaks to you. So that's going to help me to be able to give you better feedback as you're working on the project. If I know what it is that you actually care about, then I can help you focus in on that and connect it to the terms from the class. So this is all the details, all the fun stuff for the actual assignment. 2 pages, Times New Roman font, 12-point, 1-inch margins, the standard. There don't need to be any references in this. This is really just like a brief summary to introduce me to what you're thinking about. You can, of course, cite sources if you want to, but it's not required yet. It's due by this Friday. So like I said, choose some sort of media, choose an identity, explain to me why. And then the last bit of the paper should be you starting to maybe just guess or brainstorm about what kind of format you want your project to take. And so I will say some of the more successful projects in the past have been not papers. You can do a paper, of course, if you're more comfortable doing that, great. But people are able to kind of connect to identity and explore the concepts a little bit better in more of a loosely defined structure from what I've seen. So some of the best projects I've graded before were podcasts. And so a couple of them were just, the student sitting there almost giving like a mini lecture about some concept related to identity in the context of the film they chose. That worked really well. Or I've had a few who've also gotten a couple of their friends around and just talked about something. So one example is a student chose Shrek's identity development over the course of the first Shrek movie. And so because it was something that all of his friends were familiar with, he just had 3 of them sitting around, and he had kind of guiding questions that he asked them, and they reflected on them. And so he was able to then say, oh yeah, when you say that, we call this in the field of identity exploration. So he was able to kind of take what they were discussing and then frame it within the more academic language that we use from the class. And so that's a perfect way to do it as well. I've also had really good Padlets. I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but basically it's like an online space where you can have images and documents and clips. So you could like take clips from a movie, and then you can almost kind of like annotate them. And so if you have, a 2-minute clip from Die Hard, you can then talk about, okay, this is how Bruce Willis's character was, developing his identity as a savior or whatever it is, So there's a lot of different creative ways that I'm completely open to, and it doesn't have to be either of those, and it can be a research paper. But so in this, start to think about what you would feel comfortable doing, and I will give you feedback on it as you go. So I'm going to give you an example of what I would do if I were doing this assignment. The Big Green. It's the greatest movie ever created. If you haven't seen it, you should. So it was a really big piece of my childhood. And so I know it really well. I watched it probably weekly, if not more, for most of the latter half of the 90s. So I know this really, really well. So that's part of why I would choose it. And then there's a lot of different identity themes within it. So I feel like there would be a lot for me to mine from it. So you can maybe pause, read through this a little bit. This is obviously shorter than a 2-page paper, but it gives you an idea of kind of the starting point of what I want from each of those kind of 5 key components. So first, I'd be saying that I'm choosing The Big Green. I'd kind of contextualize a little bit, say it's from the mid-90s, small town, Texas. The character that I would be focusing on would be Juan, and he was kind of new to the team, and he didn't really know everybody, he wasn't really part of the community. And eventually it comes out that his mom is undocumented, and so she's trying to kind of keep him away from people so nobody figures out her secret, so he can stay in the community, have access to the schools, and those sorts of things. So that would be the identity I'm focusing on. I'm not going to read through all these paragraphs to you, so pause it and see. But it gives you an idea of what I think are the important pieces, what's worth showing to kind of explain why this is appropriate. So I'm talking enough about the identity here that it's clear that there really are identity issues at play. And so I, as the teacher, will be able to see, okay, yeah, they're going to be able to bring in this concept and that concept and that concept, and all of it fits together. So that's essentially what I'm going to be looking for, just to make sure that you're setting yourself up with an achievable project. You're choosing a media that actually does focus on this. And then the motivation, I've already told you guys, it's a personal thing. So the motivation is just, why does it speak to you specifically? Okay. So after you do the paper, then the next step is going to be your annotated bibliography. And this is worth a little bit more of your grade. But it's, again, going to be the academic foundation to your piece. So it is actually really important. It's only 4 annotations, so it's not too bad. If you've not done an annotated bibliography before, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I'm expecting here, but then I'll also give you more detail on it when we actually get to the week when it's due. But so I would say better to start earlier than later, right? So you know that you have to do this, so start looking out for sources that you think would be appropriate for either the identity you're focusing on or the media you're focusing on. There are a lot of movies and TV shows and songs that people have spent a lot of time researching. So there could already be something out there that's about whatever you're choosing. So make sure you do a good search for that to see. So an annotated bibliography, there's a lot of pieces that go into it, but one of the key ones is actually formatting your reference. Lots of things on the internet say that they can format citations for you. Some of them can. Most of them make some errors. So you can use that as a starting point, but you want to make sure that you actually know how it should look, so you can go back over it and double check to make sure that it is actually properly formatted. So on the screen now is an example of a properly formatted in an APA format journal article. So when I say scholarly sources, safest bet is to go for journal articles. That means that they've been reviewed by at least probably 3 other people. So we know that there's some integrity to the knowledge that's within it. If you're using a book or a website, anybody can publish a book, anybody can make a website, they can put all kinds of crazy stuff on there. There's no peer review involved in that. There's no checks and balances to make sure that the material is actually based in reality. So I want you to stay away from those as your key sources. Definitely you can use them as additional sources in your project, but you need to have at least 4 journal articles to really provide the foundation for you. So there's lots of resources on formatting an APA. I will link to some of them on eCampus as well, but just, make sure if you're going to use any of these online things that you double check it. If you do want to use something online, Zotero is my best recommendation. It's the closest to being correct, but it still messes up things like italics and capitalization a lot. So always double check. And then for in-text citations, this is just an example of what it would look like here. Hopefully we're all familiar with that. If not, there's opportunities that I can give you feedback and you can go back and revise if you do make any smaller mistakes. So what is an annotated bibliography? I know a lot of you have already done them before, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but essentially it's taking the source and then giving a paragraph, summary, and evaluation of it. So it should be a little critical. It's not just a summary. It's not just copying and pasting the abstract from the journal article. There's more to it, more that comes from you. So some of it's you evaluating it to see how it is appropriate for your project. But it should give the reader a decent idea of what the entire article is about without them having to actually read the article themselves. So these are basically the key pieces that I'm going to be looking for. So you're summarizing it, you're evaluating it, and you're reflecting on it. Summary, sentence or two. Evaluation, a sentence or two. Reflection, a sentence or two. It's not that long. That almost makes it harder, right? Being concise, using fewer words to say more things. But it's really good skill to be able to develop. So hopefully with only having to do 4 for this assignment, that should give you enough space to spend some time revising before you submit. So I have an example here. This is an example of a pretty good annotated bibliography entry. So take a minute and just read through, pause the screen, read through. Now, after you've read it, I've broken it down into kind of the key pieces. So looking at each of these 4 sections here, what do you think they're doing? Remember, like, you're reflecting, you're summarizing, you're evaluating. Which of each of these do you think is doing each of those tasks? So we have the summary first, we have evaluation, we have assessment. Evaluation and assessment can be broken into 2. Evaluation is, what are they doing? What's their goal? And then assessment is more, have they succeeded? Did they meet their goal? And then the reflection at the end. So a lot of times I see submissions that are summary and reflection, and they don't have any of the evaluation piece. The evaluation is really important because it tells us, is this actually worth including? Like, you might choose 4 sources, and after you read them, you might decide actually 2 of them are not going to work for your project. You can still use them here because you've read them, you've evaluated them, you've decided, okay, actually they're not appropriate. So in the evaluation or the assessment, tell me, okay, they did this. And then in the reflection, it's like, and that's actually kind of irrelevant to what I'm doing. So if you read an article and then decide you don't want to use it, you can still use it for the annotated bibliography. It's just not going to be in your final project. That's fine. It's all part of the process of doing research. You have to read a lot that you don't use when you're a researcher. A lot. Okay, then after all of that is your final project. And so this is the piece that's going to feel really unclear, really ambiguous at this stage. Hopefully after you've done your identity selection paper, it'll start to solidify a little bit. Hopefully I'll be able to share some examples of what your classmates have decided they want to do. Maybe that'll inspire folks. So when we're at the format stage for this identity selection paper this week, it doesn't need to be final. There's still time for this to evolve. It can change completely. You could say now you want to write a research paper, and then 2 weeks decide, actually, no, I want to do an interpretive dance. And, as long as you can justify it, that would be fine with me. And so we can let things evolve over time. But there is going to be a point where I need to know for sure what format the project's going to take, because I have to develop a criteria to be able to evaluate it, right? So I'm not going to be evaluating podcasts in the same way I'm evaluating research papers, or in the same way I'm evaluating a Padlet or a photo journal. All of these things are going to have to be looked at differently. So that's why we need to communicate, so I know what you're going to do, so we can agree on a fair assessment format for you. So try to look at this as an opportunity. It's space for you to be able to do whatever speaks to you. You could do a PowerPoint presentation, anything like that, I'm perfectly okay with. I just need to be able to see that you are taking an identity and evaluating it using kind of the scholarly language that we're going to be learning in this semester. So anything that does that works perfectly well for me. Things like length or how many pages something needs to be, those will be finalized later as we go. So don't worry about that now. Just think about the format you'd like to do, the identity you'd like to do, the media you'd like to do. Hopefully that was helpful. Like I said, for each of these assignments, more information will be posted on eCampus as we get to them, but this gives you kind of a general overview. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know.